C'est bon?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay, good. So just make sure that everyone who is connected online is muted, please. So we don't need to stop again. Thank you. So I don't know why you lost me, but it's fine. We will just carry forward a reminder service that has been in place for 30 years, voluntary based, with an increasing request by donors that in contracts partners comply with a clause that is basically encouraging them to report to the financial tracking service. The other challenge that we have also in 2024 is a funding crunch that has been announced by most donors. With a number of partners, we've already said that they were expecting significant cuts in allocations, and it does make the service even more on the lookout for updated information, which is why we want to talk about shared. Now, over 30 years, a number of things have happened. We have started the service basically with a simple emission of funds to one partner. It was just a simple relationship, a dual relationship. And over time, actually, as funds get transferred through partners, we have a lot of pass-through. We had to basically adapt each time. And what the service is trying to do nowadays is actually reconcile the story of in an envelope as it goes through different pass-through until it reaches its final destination. For example, we will now be trying to track from one donor to a manager fund, for example, pool fund, then to a UN agency, further down to an international NGO, and finally to a local partner. And that's the idea, is that we have to absolutely reconstruct the entire story, because as the money is progressing, of course, there are costs associated to transactions and to management, and it means that the money is changing over time with different exchange rates, different decisions, and so on and so forth. That's one aspect of a transformation that has happened over 30 years. Another one, for example, is also in the accuracy of information. So I usually take the same example each time. You attend a donor conference, and a donor announces, for example, $50 million for response to the emergency in Sudan. The issue there is that that donor might be announcing 50 million. How much of it is actual new money? How much of it is actually old money, or money that is not yet committed? And that's where also we encounter issues, is when we are made aware of sums of money that are floating around, and we actually need to make sense of this money. Is it only announced? Has it been committed? Or is it already contracted? Yes or no? And what FTS does is that it never displays promises. It does not. If there is a commitment, it will be shown, but it will not be transformed yet into contractual money. But everything that is just announced in the air can't be accounted, because we have absolutely no way to verify that it's going to be transformed into an actual contract. There are a number of other issues, example, exchange between member states, governments allocating money one to the other. We do that in some cases. We cannot do it in a number of cases, including in quite a number of conflicts, because there is no way that we could be seen or perceived as accounting for government expenditure. So there are a number of caveats, but the idea in general is still to provide a real-time, close to real-time overview of what is happening in terms of financial flows. We say close to real-time because actually the team works on a close to live database. So it means that every time there is a movement, it ends up being published rapidly within hours. And so if you connect to the financial tracking service at 8 o'clock in the morning and connect again at 12, things would have changed. And they will have gone in positive, and they will have gone in negative as well. because we have another thing that is happening is corrections. There are corrections that take place, sometimes very long time in the past. We have some donors who sometime our partners who come at the end of the year and say that they need to do corrections for the entire year, and sometimes years before, because there's been a change in the way their budget is managed and they need to basically course correct. So there is all those things are happening every single day. And we will see after in some of the new tools we are introducing to make the data a bit more tangible, that we have also set systems that are separate. So we manage the data live and we replicate the data for public consumption at defined times, because we know that it's quite difficult if you connect at 12 and you see that Sudan is funded at $10 million, and then an hour later it seems to be at 7. And 3 hours later it will be at 15, and they will go back to 12. Well, that is what is happening, is because all those movements and all those corrections and all those translations of funding, without adding the issue of exchange rates that need to be taken into account between a moment money is announced, moment money is transformed into a contract, money is contracted. Those are different times, and there are stories there with exchange rates that we need to be made aware of. So where is it coming from? All this information is coming from humanitarian partners. So whether it's government, donors, UN agencies, funds programs, national, international NGOs, private sectors as well. Increasingly, we are trying to get the private sector to report. And all of that is nowadays done in a decentralized manner. We have moved the team from Geneva to Istanbul, and we are trying to replicate a bit the system, not in an active way, but in partnership with offices around the world working on emergencies to have their feedback, and I will go to that in a minute. So the ultimate objective of having a global financial tracking service is actually to inform decisions. A number of donors are actually making decisions based on the data they see on FTS, modify their decision based on the data on FTS, and compare each other based on the data on FTS. It's quite regular that a partner comes back to us or comes to ask, why does it seem like I'm not receiving that much money? Well, then the ball is back to the partner on, have you been reporting? How regular is your report, and what's the quality of your report? Which is an issue because partners decide when they want to report. So some report twice a year, some report every quarter, some report on a monthly basis, some do not. And there are some important ones who actually do not report on key humanitarian information. But at the end of the day, it is there to try to inform those decisions. I've been talking about continuous updates already that are there to support coordination. Operationally, it does make sense to have the most information available, including through projects that are the basis of humanitarian action everywhere. It's not activities, it's project, to work on who's doing what where and who receives funds for what. So we can have a better view, and operations can then also course correct if they see that a particular sector, for example, is in trouble, or a particular partner is in trouble, which should be the case, first and foremost, for local and national NGOs that still do not receive the money that they are supposed to be receiving according to a grand bargain made between donors and large partners that has committed to have 25% of humanitarian funding going to national partners. And you will see in a minute, it's abysmal. We are far from being there, even based on voluntary reports. Another thing is sectors or issues that need to be paid attention to. The service has spent quite a lot of time on gender-based violence to try to highlight that issue, because the more we see some crises aggravating over the years, actually the needs on gender-based violence are exploding. and the funding is not necessarily following. So the system is there also to help alert on underfunded emergencies, underfunded sectors, or underfunded types of partners, or in some cases, overfunded ones. I talked already about curation, so I won't go back to that. And if you want to have a look at the mass of money, it's quite clear just over the last 2-3 years that the mass that has been processed has been in constant increase. So we can see it as donor generosity. We can also see it as more reports getting in. But we also want to look at it from another perspective, is that not only we have more funding that is reported, but we managed to make a lot of sense out of that funding. For many, many years, reports were arriving and were of poor quality. And it was very, very difficult actually to curate the data and arrive at a time where the data could be safely published. Because as I said, it's a live database. And so if we make a mistake of 20 or 30 million dollars, at the end of the day, literally at the end of the day, someone will come and hold the service accountable and ask questions. So it does take time to create all of this. So over the years, if you just look at the situation in 2022 and 2023, there was an increase of over 4 billion in total money processed, which is quite significant. It's 30% more. The same applies to money then inside the global humanitarian overview, and the reduction on money outside, because actually a lot more effort has been made to reconcile money against plans, and we also have more trust in those plans, so more money going against the plans instead of going outside a plan and into a country. But we have equally seen, of course, the global requirements continue to increase. I think that if most of you are connected to the humanitarian planet, have seen that the requirements just keep growing every single year. 2024 is the first year where we have actually introduced a boundary setting system for coordinated plans that has significantly reduced the overall requirements in the global humanitarian overview, but that does not mean that has reduced the requirements in terms of needs at country level. It's just the way they are captured and the priorities that I made for that global humanitarian overview. I was speaking a bit earlier about granularity. That is also a big thing, quite difficult for the service, is everything that is called multi-sectoral. So when a donor assigns money, a partner assigns funding, usually we hope that they will manage to decide whether it's for protection or food security or water and sanitation. In a number of cases, and it's understandable, we end up with a multi-sectoral pocket that includes several sectors, and that multiple sectoral pocket basically increased over the years. We have managed to reduce it a bit because of the service change in the way it's processing and the way it's engaging with partners, so we could get more granularity. And as I mentioned, if you just look at gender-based violence, which is at the bottom of the table here, we do manage now to capture more money because a lot of advocacy has been made around gender-based violence and more reports are getting in. It's just one example among others, but it is one of the priorities for us. If you are looking then at funding distribution, it's a big table. Colleagues who are online could mute. Thank you. If you look at the share between UN international partners first, you will see that actually the share on international NGOs has increased quite a bit in terms of volume of reports, which is good news. We also have made quite a number of advances with the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. Quite an amount of money cannot be reported to FTS for specific reasons, but we are trying to break that gap in some countries, and we should have more money from the Red Cross and Red Crescent starting to come in the service. But if you look at the bottom, this is the one that is worrying us the most, and is the share of local organizations as recipients. In 2022, we were at 0.5%, 23, 4%. 24, we have a massive gap now across the board. We are at the beginning of May, and we already have an issue is that compared to previous years, we are already 3 to 4 billion down in terms of volume of reports. Now, they might come later, but it is a worrying trend that we start to see, and it also means that the share for local partners is not yet reflected. If it changes by the end of the year, we will all be very, very happy, but we will still be far from the committed 25%, according to the grand bargain. Business process-wise, I think that we have talked about all of that ad nauseam, so I won't take you through this again. I will just give you a couple of seconds if you want to take a screenshot of that particular slide on the PowerPoint. So basically, you have a summary of the sources of information, the curation process, and where does it end in terms of output. So we've been talking at the beginning about ownership, because it is actually the responsibility of everyone to ensure that we are accountable for the funds that we receive, and also transparent about the money that we receive. And what we hope is that with the transformation we are going to be talking about now, we will have more reports coming in, more granularity, more regularity, as well as increased quality in terms of reports. So what we ask you in the room and those of you who are online is actually to promote the financial tracking service. It might be a big ask, but it is quite important that we make sure that colleagues, partners who are in the field know about the service, and that the service is there to help. If there are issues around capacity, if there are issues around language, the service is there to try to find solutions so we can get more reports in, and we can also use that to continue to hold everyone accountable, because at the end of the day, the service supports accountability, even though we certainly do not have the entire funding that floats around for humanitarian response. That's clear. It is still one of the most important single source of information, global one. And it's true that when we put out a number at 4% of funding for local partners, even though one might say, well, FTS is not reliable, it's voluntary, they don't get all the funding, sometimes there is a bug. Well, when we're at 4 and the target is 25, you could imagine that someone could say, well, the truth must be around 10. Well, you're still way below the 25. So it's a balancing act between relying on the information that is put out there, is the best that is available, but also balancing that with the commitments that were made. Among some of the ways we have changed processes, FTS used to be essentially a centralized service. So the service has active contracts with donors and large partners, mainly UN agencies, on the way reports get in. And it's centralized in most cases, meaning that FTS has no right to use any information unless it has been cleared by the concerned agency or the concerned donor in a centralized manner. So If we want to know about what the United States of America has transferred in terms of humanitarian funding, we will have to wait for an official report from the United States of America when they decide to send it. And it depends on them. They are the ones who will be providing a single source of truth. Now, there might be a newsletter coming out of one of the numerous organs of the US. We are not authorized to use the information, even if it's official and public. We will have to wait for an official report. So the same applies for a number of other partners. A number of others are decentralized. So we have some donors who actually have no central system and rely on what is said and done in each country and in each emergency. So our source of information then is completely decentralized. And we have others, we have chosen the easy way, which is a mixed situation of both centralized and decentralized. So there is a lot of energy spent reconciling between what they say in a decentralized manner and what they say in a centralized manner, and then checking against every partner receiving money. So it's still a complex story. But the change we have made in FTS is that the service does, if information comes in a centralized manner, has now started for the past 2 years to engage in every single emergency, including at regional level, to audit its own data. So before, the way it was working was FTS was publishing, and that was the end of the story. And whether you believed it or not, that was basically your problem. What has changed is that now FTS audits its own data. For example, the Democratic Republic of the Congo emergency, while FTS will be sending its data to the DRC, OCHA country office and partners and say, this is all the data that we have. If you have not checked, these are all the details. Can you please recheck with us? And if there is any information that you have that we don't, send it to us, and that will be then managed. So we will take over and we will contact the donor or the concerned partner for you, and then we will process more money. And your mass of funding will basically increase because you have contributed in cleaning the data partially, if there is an obvious problem or mistake in an allocation, or if there is a significant amount of money that is missing. The last bit that we have not yet made progress on is local partners. And that remains the biggest challenge, is to find a way to engage with local partners in every country, because they do not have the capacity. And in many cases, they actually do not have access to contracts to receive funding. So, with the colleagues online muting themselves, thank you very much. What we will do now is that my colleague Borjo, who is in Istanbul, will take over. I will stop sharing and will take you through some of the innovations and changes that have been done on the website to provide more readability. And my esteemed colleague Christian Flam here will then talk to you about a visualization tool that has been implemented on FTS, and that should change the way you are looking at data. So Borjo, over to you.
Thank you, Vincent, and good afternoon to all who joined our session. Thank you. And as Vincent mentioned, that the FTS is the global reference point for tracking the humanitarian funding. And given the increasing humanitarian requirements around the world, the demand for our service is also rising. So your active participation, your active engagement is also very critical for our transformation process. So the reporting into FTS enables the informed humanitarian decision making. And what it means that the humanitarian world is making decisions based on what we present here, what I am presenting here, based on this data. So what we receive is your reportings, the funding reportings. We process them, and it is within an hour reflected on our website. So I'll now walk you through simply on our main web page. And just to begin with, our website is fairly plain and very easy to navigate. And just the main page is just presenting the overview for the humanitarian funding information. And what you see here, for example, is the total funding tracked. That means that what is reported into our service and what we process. So this is so far around 8.46 billion. And on the main page, what you see is an interactive map, and that is also available as a list. And this map is available for the funding information for where funds are coming from, which means the donor information, where funds are going. Again, on this map, you will see the recipient information, as well as progress on coordinated plans. If you wish, you can also see this funding information. You see, for example, the Japan as a donor, but you can see this information as a list and the funding sources, I mean, the governments as donors. And if you just click on this arrow, you will see all this funding information by the governments in descending order. So this interactive map and the list is followed by some tables regarding the funding levels. And for example, if you're on this where funds are from, all the tables that you will see here would be related to would be donor related. Can you mute your microphone, colleagues? Thank you. And the other tables that you will see following this map will be, for example, if you're on this tab, will be recipient related.